You guys are going to hear a lot about Radical Jesus today. So I'm going to share probably a lot of stories with you, but my first story I'm going to share with you is about a year ago. But a year ago is exciting because a year ago is like 3 days ago. So I was talking with a friend earlier, and we were on Skype with each other, and I was talking about 2016. And you know, most of us in this room are fairly young, so we're on social media a lot. And we were talking about how 2016 has to have been one of the cruddiest years we've seen in a long time. And I mean, like, in retrospect, probably not, but it looks like it's been one of the worst years ever. And then we were talking about how on social media, we see this anticipation of 2017 not being really an anticipation. Like, to describe the anticipation that I felt for 2017, I was Skyping that same friend, and she was in a closet, and I was in my room, and I didn't want to go out. And we weren't looking forward to 2017 because we were thinking about 2016 and what happened in 2016. And you look back at 2016, and it's really hard to see the good things. You see a lot of the bad things that happen. You look at Aleppo. You look at people shooting other people for no reason. You look at the news and you're bombarded with all of this negative feedback, and that's all that you can remember, and that's all that sticks in your heart. And when I was thinking back on that, and I was thinking of like what my sermon was going to be, the word radical jumped out to me, because radical is something that I've seen in the media a lot more lately, and not necessarily in a good way. So looking at the word radical, you see it on the title and covers of news stories. You see radical Islam strikes again, radical shooter walks into a school, radical belief systems cause panic among communities, and you get all of this negative connotation behind the word radical. And I was like, well, that can't be right, because I describe people as radical all the time, but it's not a bad thing. So I looked up the word radical on Google and looked on Merriam-Webster and found 3 definitions for radical. And the first one wasn't the radical that I thought of. The first one was of or relating to the root of something, which I thought was interesting. And then the next one was of or relating to the root of something important or going back to the origin of. And then the third definition is what we mostly think of, which is against the usual or traditional values. And so radical is this big buzzword that I feel like is circulating, and we have this negative connotation, but it's not necessarily a bad thing, because we look at Jesus, and I don't think it's terribly crazy for me to say that Jesus was a radical thinker. Luke 6:35, I'll open up right here, is my example of that, and it's just a short little quote that Jesus gave that says, "But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be the child of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked." And you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like, you should be nice to people. But there's an important word in that verse, and that word is enemies. Be kind to your enemies. Let's look for a raise of hands. How many of you guys have gone to any sort of masterclass worship where your church talks about how to be kind to those who are enemies of yours? 1, 2. Okay. That's what I thought. I've never been to it, never seen it. The church doesn't know what to do with this. I don't know what to do with this. Jesus knew what to do with this, but we don't know what to do with this. And that is a radical notion, because we look at the Bible and we're expected to know this all, and then we have things in the Bible that we don't know what to do with them. So I'm going to propose a postulate to you, and that is that Jesus was a radical during his time. Jesus currently is still a radical, because we don't know what to do with it, and this idea will remain radical to us. And so looking kind of at Jesus and how he lived his life, I have a quote that I want to share with you guys, and I really like it. It's from Twitter, because I'm on social media a lot, because I'm a millennial. So Jesus was a radical, a non-violent revolutionary who hung around with lepers, hookers, and crooks, was an American, never spoke English, was anti-wealth, anti-death penalty, anti-public prayer, but was never anti-gay, never mentioned abortion or birth control, never called the poor lazy, never justified torture, never fought for tax cuts for the wealthiest Nazarenes, never asked a leper for a copay, and was a long-haired, brown-skinned, homeless, community organizing, anti-slut-shaming Middle Eastern Jew. And that is radical. And I look at this, and I can't help but think of my peers, millennials, people born after 1994. And you look at this, and you look at the values that you see on college campuses across the community. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the word millennial. So I say the word millennial, and I wonder if some of maybe the older folk in the crowd roll their eyes at the word millennial, or hopefully, since you guys have been around this amazing group of young preachers, are really excited to hear the word millennial. But I've been in several instances where millennial has not necessarily been a good descriptor. And so you look at the news and you see millennials are wrecking the diamond market. Yeah, you see millennials are not buying enough things. Millennials aren't investing. Millennials aren't doing what we expect them to do. Yeah, and then I look at my peers and I ask them, okay, well, what do you think a millennial is? And they think that millennials are hardworking. They know how to use the tools that are presented to themselves. And the number one response that I got from all my friends when I asked, they said millennials are concerned with being kind to other people. And that just stuck with me because every single person I asked who was my age said that millennials were kind. They were concerned with how others felt and how they treated other people. So I don't think it's really radical for me to say that Jesus was a lot like a millennial in the sense that we need to be kind to others. But then again, this isn't all the way true because Jesus gives a task that is impossible to do. You look at Luke 6:35 and you say, okay, yeah, love my enemies. I'm going to try to do that. But then you look at the next verse, and it says, be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. And then you're like, oh, well, shoot, because there's a problem with this statement. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful. We're not like God. We cannot be God. We can't be merciful in the same way that God is merciful because God loves unconditionally. And that's impossible for us to do. And so Jesus gives us this task that's impossible to do. And you're thinking, okay, well, what do I do with this? Because I have this impossible task that is presented to me. Not only is it radical, you can't do it. But maybe you kind of can. So the radical notion is that you're aspiring to something that you can never achieve. And I'm going to share another story with you guys. I am a musician. I'm studying music therapy. And one thing that musicians do a lot is that we're never satisfied. We're never satisfied with how the result turns out. There's always something that can be done, improved, made better. And that's not just true for musicians. That's true for politicians. That's true for anyone who cares about what they do in their field. That's true for anyone who cares about anything that they do in their life, because your best is never good enough. So it's not a radical notion to aspire to something that can never be achieved. And loving someone who hates you in the same way that God loves others, yeah, right, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. And there's a special kind of strength in trying to do this, because there's a strength through God that is not possible through all of these other aspirations that we do. It's because God is providing that strength for you to aspire to something that you will never achieve. We're called to be radical, just like Jesus, to aspire to change the things that are impossible to do. And in conclusion, I want to share with you guys one of my favorite verses, but before I do that, I have semi-story for you, a little bit of math, physics, etc. I'm not an expert, but I hope I can explain this well enough. So how many of you guys have studied black holes, know about black holes? Anybody? So I'm going to be sharing, okay, mostly new information. So black holes are really interesting. My sophomore year of high school, we had a speaker come in. He was an astrophysicist, and I was in debate class, and our debate resolution was on expanding growth in outer space, which was really interesting because I didn't know anything about space. So this astrophysicist came in, and he starts talking about black holes. And what black holes do, what's really interesting, there's a reason they're called black holes, because no light can escape from a black hole. Light goes in, and it does not come out, it does not penetrate through. Black holes are so incredibly powerful that if you look at a chart of what a black hole looks like, it takes time and space, and it kind of crumbles it into a little ball and sucks it up. So Black holes are this empty, void existence from perception, when in all actuality, there's still light happening. There's still time happening in this black hole. We just can't perceive it. And so that's what I think of when I think of these two verses that really work well in conjunction with each other. For Jesus said, I am the light and the truth and the way. And then the light shone through in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. We are called to be radical like Jesus. We are called to show through that light that even if you can't see it, it still exists in the darkness. Amen.